Hey everybody, welcome back to Battle Ready Inc. So today's deck profile, we're going over MirageGaogamon here. Now, just recently, it actually took first place in one of the regionals, and I literally rated this deck at the top of the tier list for my BT15 predictions, and so far it's been doing quite well over the past few weeks. So I thought I'd go ahead and give my spin on the deck. This is kind of an amalgamation of a couple different lists that have been topping, which is kind of like the cards that I feel like are really, really good for the deck. Alright, as always, I have the whole deck profile pulled up for you guys so you can follow along with us and see kind of the overall thoughts. So right off the bat for our babies here, we've got the 3 Wanyamons here. This is the when attacking, if you have a blue tamer, you draw one. And then the 1 of Bukamon, this is the one that you get the jamming. If while your opponent has no Digimon with as many or more Digivolution cards as this Digimon, it gains jamming, which is really good on a lot of our stuff if we want to get in some early checks, as well as this is just mainly like the baby you want to see the most. So having it 1 of 4, we can at least hopefully see it a little bit sooner. If not, it's okay. Wanyamon's still great. I don't think you need 5 eggs in this deck, just because it's not that kind of deck that's like turboing through rookies out of raising area. If anything, we're going to be hard playing stuff for searches. So yeah, we're going to be building up a stack primarily in raisings, especially if we hatch the Bukamon. All right, for our rookie lineup here, we've got the BT11 Gaomon. This is the on-play reveal 3, add 1 Gaogamon in name and 1 blue tamer. So this is like your primary on-play searching card. Like this, you almost never ever want to evo this in raising area if you can help it, just because it's your main searcher. The inheritable, when attacking once per turn, if you have a tamer in play, return 1 of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hands. So yeah, that's it's okay. But the next one though, the EX4 Gaomon, this one's really solid. So on player, both players draw the top card of their deck. Like in general, okay, that's an okay effect. But when you start to think about all the interactions that has, particularly you have a lot of cards that say when an opponent adds a card to their hand, especially during your turn, you trigger a lot of effects. So this is a great one to just pop off and immediately get all the inheritables and things like that. And the inheritable is actually also really incredible, kind of the one of the primary ones you want in your Evo stack. Your turn once per turn, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hands, gain 1 memory. So that's what I was talking about. So you can do some really good plays with that kind of inheritable. But the other one that I actually really like here is the Betamon. So if you don't have the Bukamon and you end up with the Wanyamon, Betamon here coming in clutch, giving that jamming, there's no requirements. You just get jamming. Like, really good. On play, if played by an effect, which will never happen, one of your opponent's Digimon can't attack until the end of their turn. You're playing this for jamming, okay? This is, from what I've seen, a lot of people are like, they love it or they don't, feel like they need it at all. Since we don't have like black box text on our level 4s, I don't think needing like name specific stuff is as important. Like you want to talk about big stack decks, think of like Greymon, right? Where you have to run Agumon because all your Greymons have the black box text to evo on top of any color Agumon, that sort of thing. Whereas this deck doesn't have that kind of restriction. So Betamon for that jamming, really solid. I did cut down the rookies. Yeah, I know. We're down to 11 here. This deck is surprisingly tight. Like, to fit all the things you need in it and be consistent at the same time, like, you could argue cutting the hybrid. So hybrid for game, of course, is a viable option in this deck because we have a good amount of tamers. And, we're a go fast, clear your opponent's stack sort of deck. So hybrid for game is pretty common, but I don't feel like I hate just one-ofs, right? One hybrid. I know it's not like a must-have part of the strategy, like it's just an extra bonus way to win. But I don't know. It's just, I would rather have 2 of it. For our level 4s, which is also extremely tight here, we've got the BT13 Gaogamon. This is when Digivolving. If you don't have a Thomas, you can play one from your hand without paying the cost. The Inheritables all turns when an opponent's had all turns while your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand. This Digimon gets 1000 DP for the turn. The Inheritable is not super important. It's mainly here for the win Digivolving. You want to cheat out your Thomases for free, just to be as efficient as possible. It's a 2 Evo cost, and you can either play a 4 or a 3. And you get a draw out of it. It's just really solid, especially if you hard play this Gaomon for the search and then follow it up with the Gaogamon here from BT13 to then play it out for free. So pretty good 1-2 punch there in those guys. But our primary Evo stack Gaogamon here is from EX4. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hands. This can be really good for like getting rid of like memory blockers, because this deck really likes its memory gain abilities. So clearing out a memory blocker can be good, but also the Inheritable. Your turn, once per turn, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hands, gain 1 memory. So same as the Gaomon we saw earlier. This is what you really want to see in your Evo stacks. All right, for our level 5s here, I'm actually going to move this guy up here. We'll go ahead and talk about the number 1, or the one of, right? You got the EX4 Mock Gaogamon. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to its owner's hands. Just like no restriction, doesn't have to have no sources or anything like that. You just get to bounce something immediately. Pretty solid. When attacking, once per turn, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, unsuspend this Digimon. Like with this deck, is really easily to get your opponent to have 8 cards in their hand, or they'll just naturally have 8 cards in their hand. Super easy, especially by the time this is an Inheritable. By the time you're going into a Mega, it's very easy for your opponent to have that many cards, especially if you're bouncing stuff. So really easy to trigger this unsuspend this Digimon when attacking effect. But our other one is the BT11. When Digivolving, until the end of your opponent's turn, this Digimon gains blocker. Not super relevant, but and gains 2000 DP for every 4 cards in your opponent's hands. So you can get some nice DP. Again, if you don't have like your jamming, then getting a lot of that DP boost will definitely help. And then the Inheritable on this one is all turns once per turn. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, unsuspend this Digimon. So it's a little bit more, stipulation dependent. You can't just trigger it as easy, but still, like with your Mirage and your Burst mode, it should come up. And then in like I said, worst case scenario, you can play the EX4 Gaomon and force them to draw a card and to trigger this Inheritable. Now, having all that memory can be a little difficult, so just kind of keep that in mind. And then instead of running more Mock Gaogamon, Zudomon Ace here, I think, is an actual pretty solid include. So following up with the Gaogamon that plays out the Thomas for free, and you just got that level 4 chilling there, and you're evoing up in your raising area, and your opponent's like, all right, well, I know this deck likes to go fast, likes to go burr. I'm going to go ahead and get my checks in now before it starts to really pop off, and they swing, and you're like, okay, Zudomon Ace, just out of nowhere. I think it's a pretty solid tech card, honestly. That Blast Evo, so Evo for free when Digivolving, trash any 2 Digivolution cards from your opponent's Digimon. Any 2. It doesn't have to be the bottom 2. It can be, 1 at the top, 1 in the middle. You get a pick. That's very, very, very valuable. Then return one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards to the hand. So, really powerful bit of effects there, especially on a 0 Evo cost. So, Zudomon Ace, yeah, I think it's a solid include here. Next, for the main Mega of the deck, kind of what you typically, when you go into this, then you're ready to start going on the offensive here. It's a 4 Evo cost. However, it does mitigate itself pretty easily. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to its owner's hands. Again, no restrictions on that, just level 5 or lower. If no Digimon was returned by this effect, your opponent adds the top card of their security stack to their hand. Super good. That Mirage effect has always been pretty solid, just being able to clear out a security without having to check it just on Evo is really good. And then all turns once per turn when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. This is all turns, okay? So keep that in mind, guys. All turns once per turn when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hands. So in theory, when digivolving, yes, you're going to either bounce something from the field or their security to their hand, immediately trigger this. Typically, you're going to gain back about 2 memory on average. So he's a 2 Evo cost Mega that got a removal is really, really good. He's a 12,000 DP, which is fine. We have ways to boost him as well as to gain jamming. Yeah, and then all turns. So if your opponent plays like a search card during their turn, right, and they flip over the top 3, add a tamer to hand or Digimon, whatever, boom, Mirage goes off, and then they lose all that memory. Like, yeah, your 3-cost Agumon there just turned into a 5-cost Agumon search. So, yeah, really, really powerful effect on that one. Now, we do have a backup in the form of our BT13 Mirage. It has Evade just to kind of help stick it around on the board a little bit. When digivolving, return one of your opponent's tamers to the hand. So depending on the matchup you're in, this can be really important. Red Hybrid also making a comeback, and that's also a very, very aggro deck. So slow it down a bit by bouncing back to hand. And then all turns, once per turn, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, you may play 1 Thomas from your hand without paying the cost. This is another nice one because you can like keep triggering burst mode if you need to go into a second burst mode. Being able to evo, into this guy to get you another Thomas on field, could come up. A 4 evo to play a 4-cost Thomas, it kind of evens out a little bit. It's just a one of, right? It's not like super crazy. It's a one of tech. That's just another MirageGaogamon because just having 4 is not enough. So we went ahead and added that one in for 5. Normally I like to run 6 megas, but in this case, this is kind of a different thing. It's a really lean strategy here. Like we've only got the 5 level 5s that we prefer to evo on top of. And we got the 4 megas that we prefer to evo on top of those 5 with. 7 Gaogamons that we, the level 4s that we prefer to evo on. Like, I do like the fact that we have backup evo targets, right? In worst case scenarios, like, well, we got to do what we got to do, right? You just get your evos on into your megas, do what you got to do. But yeah, we do have a primary stack that we do like to go into. And then, of course, you have the burst mode here. That is the center point of the deck that really pops it off. You can evo it for free by returning Thomas to your hand. And then at the end of the burst Digimon's Digivolution turn, trash this Digimon's top card. So basically, he de-digivolves himself back into his level 6 form. When digivolving, return one of your opponent's Digimon to the hand. No restriction on that. Return anything you want. It's very powerful. Then gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. Evo this guy for free, and then gain more memory back. It's pretty gnarly. Now, you could also evo this guy for the full 5. Keep in mind, just because you can burst evo doesn't mean you have to. And if you evo for 5, then you just get to keep him, right? So then every single round you're attacking, or every time you're attacking, right? Because this when attacking isn't once per turn. If your opponent has 9 or more cards in their hand, by choosing cards in your opponent's hand without looking and returning them to the bottom of the deck so that 8 remain, unsuspend this Digimon. Man, at locals last week, oh man, one of my best friends, Austin, was playing this deck and had some crazy security checks. Stuff like that was adding to hand, right? So you could hit like the X antibody option, it goes to hand, right? Anything like that. And so he would swing, trigger the when attacking, get him down to 8 cards, and unsuspend, right? And he would check something, and a card would go to hand. So he would swing again, trash back down, because they added a card to hand, and unsuspend again. It was so good. And so swing, and then you could also, once again, play something like this Gaomon here and force your opponent to draw again. So then you swing again, make them trash something else, unsuspend. This card's gnarly. Like, done right, like, absolutely insane. And then all that memory gain is just really nice on that Evo to help you pop off with plays like that. So if you do burst Evo for 0 and you don't have to spend any memory, and then you just gain a whole bunch of memory, then you can utilize that for other things, which is really powerful. And that is it for the Digimon. Going into our options here, you know me, I've got to have my big removal. Like something has to, you got to be able to deal with certain threats. Because sometimes, depending on what you're playing against, you might just hard lose, depending on what the deck is, right? So if it can't be bounced or something like that, and it's a big defensive wall that you just can't get past, like what do? Full Moon Meteor Impact. Return one of your opponent's Digimon to the hand, then gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. So pretty easy to make this a 7 play cost pretty early, and then 6 and so on. It is just a bounce to hand, but that's still pretty solid. It's basically a new Cocytus Breath. Cocytus is already at 7. This is basically always at 7 right from the get-go, so it's just as good, and then gets even better as the game goes on. Of course, we got the one of Ice Wall. Like, this deck doesn't have a whole lot of defensive tech, so just having like that one extra turn to help, get to pop off is going to be really important. And that's just what Ice Wall is for. Just give you one extra turn, because how many games has it been where you said, man, one more turn and I would have had it? And Ice Wall is how you get that one more turn. One Evo, choke your opponent, or not one Evo, one play cost, choke your opponent at 1. It's really good, and especially if you like have Mirage and they play into the Mirage and you just like steal their turn away from them. I've got the 2 blue memory boost here. It's kind of a debate, right? What do you run, mental training or blue memory boost? I like the mental training just to Evo for super cheap and then gain memory back, like Evo into my level 5 and then Evo into my level 6, and then burst Evo, right? So mental training feels really good for that, but Blue Memory Boost digs deeper, so it digs 4, only adds Digimon, so if you don't have a Thomas, really try to avoid playing this if you don't have a Thomas already in rotation, because that's going to be very important, and you'll probably bottom deck it if you don't. But the delay gain 2 memory, I do like in this deck, particularly for the plays we were talking about, right? I need memory to play Gaomon here to force my opponent to draw so I can trigger some effects. I need memory to do that. Mental training won't help me in that regard, but Blue Memory Boost will. So I think it does have its place. Like, I debated a 3-3 split just for that, but I was like, I don't want to make it a 3-3 split for a single play, right? And that's kind of why I avoided putting it up to 3. But 2 definitely, absolutely is worth it. And then mental training here. The classic reveal to add any blue card, which is great for, again, digging for pieces, whether that be Thomas or your Megas or your Burst Modes, whatever it is that you're trying to dig for. You don't have to worry about missing on something, or even Ice Wall, right? You don't want to bottom deck the one of Ice Wall or removal option in a really desperate situation. And then that delay reduce the Evo cost by 2. It's just mental training's stupid good. All the training cards are stupid good. Like, it's no contest. I did debate trying to fit in a Hammer Spark. You could, in theory, cut the blue memory boost for Hammer Spark because it kind of serves the same role, right? Of we're trying to extend our plays and do more in our turn. But then you have to give up the search. So I think it's personal preference, right? What would I rather have, Blue Memory Boost or 2 Hammer Sparks? If you have any indication, please let me know in the comments, because I'm curious of other people's thoughts on that, on how to go about that. And then, of course, for our Thomases, we're just running 2 of each. We got the Memory Fixer here for 4 play costs. When one of your Digimon of Gaomon or Gaogamon in its name attacks by suspending this Tamer, both players draw 1 card from their deck. So again, with Burst Mode, it forces your opponent to draw. So then you can always kind of, that first swing, your opponent already has a bunch of cards in their hand. So you trash down and then you unsuspend. Then you swing again, activate this Thomas, force your opponent to draw a card, and then unsuspend again, right? So yeah, it's just a solid card. Not really much else to say. And I think my mouse is dying here at the end. We have the BT4 Thomas as well, because we need more Thomases, just for the burst mode effect here to be able to bounce something to Evo for free. So this is our alternative here for BT4, on play, draw 1. So same with the Gaomon that we've been talking about this whole time. You can do that same exact play with this Thomas, as well as main. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you may suspend this tamer to unsuspend one of your Gaomon in its name. Again, more swings. Like, you want to talk about basically an OTK deck of chip damage, like no security attack bonus in this deck. We're literally hitting you one attack at a time. But there is other ways that that's actually super nice, because say your opponent has a whole bunch of stuff on their field and you know you can't get through their security this turn, and you know if you leave all these bodies, they're going to be able to beat you. And so you're like, swing over a body, unsuspend, swing over another body, unsuspend, swing over another body, unsuspend. So I like the flexibility of this deck versus, you know, I've got security attack +4 with no piercing and you have a blocker, or I have piercing and you have a blocker with armor purge, so I don't get my piercing. MirageGaogamon's like, okay, swing over. Okay, you armor purge. I'm unsuspending. I'm swinging again. Now we'll kill it. You know, unsuspend. Let me swing for something else. Kill it. Unsuspend. The flexibility of this is really nice. So you can still get just as many checks. It takes more setup to do it rather than just a single Evo stack, but the deck is pretty efficient at what it does, so I don't think it's all that bad. Like, you just need the one Evo stack and a Thomas, right? It's not a ton of setup to be able to do all those things. Now, keep in mind, if you're bouncing your Thomases to hand for your burst mode, that could become an issue as well. So just kind of be careful. It's never a bad idea to have multiple Thomases on field at all. So yeah, that is the deck. Let me know what you guys think. Yeah, I rated this deck as #1 for the BT15 format, and I still think it's, you know, it's showing itself right now. It's showing how well it's doing. So yeah, it's just got, you know, really nice efficiency to it, and that's what I like about it.